Say what you want about romance movies, in particular the rom-com genre, but these films are important. They're comforting like a cozy blanket or a warm hug. They're instant mood boosters courtesy of their feel-good vibes. And despite the predictability that often comes with the genre, these movies give us hope for humanity and our own love stories. That's why it's so important when movies like You, Me, and Tuscany come along. The film, starring Halle Bailey and Regé-Jean, gives off so much whimsy and feel-good vibes. It's a rarity to see Black love depicted on screen in such a light, carefree, and fun way. I feel like You, Me, and Tuscany is such a breath of fresh air. What about this film excites you most?
Just the fact that we haven't had something like this in forever. I mean, I don't even want to say ever, but it's just been a long time. I can't think off the top of my head. We've had something where it's just not rooted in like, oh, I'm going to save this girl. It's whimsy. It's fun. It's innocent. I love it.
This film has faced a lot of pressure to be a box office success in the weeks leading up to its April 10th release date, with filmmaker Nina Lee even revealing the fate of her already shot rom-com, That's Her, starring Coco Jones, will only be released depending on how successful Yumi and Tuscany is at the box office. And that is absolutely wild, because it's basically sending the message that if this film fails, Hollywood is going to be more hesitant to make lighthearted Black rom-coms or romance films in the future. And to me, this begs the question, whose love stories get to be told? The romance genre has a very rich history, stretching back to the silent film era. But when most of us think of the romance genre, specifically rom-coms, we largely think of that golden age of rom-coms that spanned between the years of 1990 to 2005. Notting Hill, While You Were Sleeping, You Got Mail, The Wedding Planner, Never Been Kissed, How Stella Got Her Groove Back, 13 Going on 30, Bridget Jones's Diary, and Hitch, just to name a few. And the genre has changed a lot from what we once knew it to be. Over the last several years, we have gotten far less romance and comedy films on the big screen, as action films, superhero movies, sequels, reboots, and the like have taken over, as big studios are largely prioritizing big budget blockbusters these days. And because of that, many romance and comedy films are being released straight to streaming. What are these new rom-coms missing that, some of these films from, even like, I think about your book, the Nora Ephron at the movies, like those movies are still so timeless and classic and they still stay with you and they still feel just like home when you watch them. So what to you do you think is missing from these newer crop of movies and even shows?
I think, part of it is the writers that have made some of our favorite rom-coms are no longer with us, and they set this standard that we really hold those movies to at this point.
Yeah.
And, some of these people like Nora or Nancy Meyers, in my opinion, too, like irreplaceable to me. Nancy is still alive, obviously, but
Yeah.
but I also think it's a lack of younger writers being given opportunities to share fresh stories. I think it's a lot of times regurgitating the same IP for a new generation. And it's like, what was the movie that I heard
13 Going on 30.
13 Going on 30
Yeah.
remake. I love Jennifer Garner. I love that movie,
Yeah,
but I don't want that movie reboot. Like,
I love the actors too, but
yeah.
exactly, like we don't need it. I think we all, like you said, there's an appetite for new and fresh, and when we get it and it feels right, it hits. However, on a different note, when you really start to look at and analyze the films that came out during that golden age of the rom-com genre, there isn't a lot of diversity in terms of race and sexuality across that. And to be honest, there still isn't a lot of diversity in that regard even nowadays as we get ready for the release of You, Me, and Tuscany. You, Me, and Tuscany, of course, is far from being the first of its kind. The earliest known depiction of Black romance in film is the 1898 silent film Something Good, Negro Kiss. It's a 29-second movie featuring Saint Subtle and Gertie Brown sharing various intimate moments, including kissing. And that was a huge deal for the time period, as it was a non-stereotypical portrayal of Black people. And then, in 1919, we got The Homesteader, which is credited as the first feature-length film to showcase Black love in a central storyline. And many decades later, Spike Lee's 1986 film, She's Gotta Have It, marked a pivotal point for authentic Black love stories to be seen on screen. And it was a major commercial success. bringing in $7 million after being produced for just $172,000. It set the stage for films like Boomerang, Love Jones, Love and Basketball, Last Holiday, and The Best Man to come along in the years that followed. And all of these movies are now regarded as rom-com classics.
When it comes to Black and POC stories in this space, what have been your observations as a whole?
So there has been almost none in these
Yeah.
spaces. That's what I've noticed. Like I said, a lot of the times where you're seeing a Black romance movie, it's like, oh, okay, we're in love, but we shouldn't be. Or we're in love and you're saving me from, this years of trauma or from this bad relationship. We don't just have, like, I mentioned the 51st dates where it's like, oh, I fell in love with you, and I met you and I'm going to make you fall in love with me every single day. Like, we don't get anything like that. So there's very much lack of. So I definitely
Yeah.
want to see any more, that we can get out there.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a while. I feel like the last one that comes to mind where it's just like happy-go-lucky characters
Yeah.
just think like a man too.
Yes.
The theaters, like the that whole franchise.
Yes.
But then we had like The Photograph, and that wasn't really like happy, I guess.
Yeah.
It's more of a drama, romance drama. But
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, we need light.
Yes, we need something that's just gonna make us like smile and laugh and like just not like cry in like a good way. Those
Yes.
things that we get from rom-com. So we just need, we need
Tears
that
of joy.
now.
Tears
Yeah.
of joy.
But still, despite having a long way to go in many regards, Black audiences have been able to see their love stories on screen more than people of other racial demographics. Jennifer Lopez is a rom-com queen in her own right, and in my research into her filmography, I've noticed that her love interests have largely been white. And there's a reason for that. Jennifer Lopez said in a roundtable interview with The Hollywood Reporter that she had fought hard for the rom-com roles that she got because it, quote, felt like all the women in romantic comedies always looked the same way. They were always white. And seeing diversity in this genre on the big screen is impactful, with 2018's Crazy Rich Asians reaching over $239 million worldwide at the box office, going against a $30 million budget. And this was a historic milestone too, as it was the first major Hollywood studio film with an all-Asian cast in 25 years. And Think Like a Man, which featured a largely Black cast, opened at #1 in the box office in 2012, with 33.6 million, overperforming above expectations. It even ended the Hunger Games' 4-week box office reign. But we also need to step outside the heteronormative lens and examine how LGBTQ love stories have shaped up on the big screen as well. 2018's Love, Simon made history upon being released, as it was the first major Hollywood studio film to focus on gay teenage romance. It was also a box office success, eventually leading to a spin-off TV series for Hulu. The lead of this movie, Nick Robinson, was straight, and this is, of course, a very typical practice for the genre. But I do credit the mainstream success of this film for having opened the doors for Bros to come out 4 years later. Bros was released in 2022, and it was the first gay romantic comedy from a major Hollywood studio featuring an entirely LGBTQ principal cast. But this film was sadly a box office flop. Interestingly enough, LGBTQ plus romance films often achieve higher per theater averages in the independent space, including Call Me By Your Name, Moonlight, and Brokeback Mountain. There appears to be a disconnect with these types of stories with broader audiences. I also noticed in my research, where are all the mainstream lesbian love stories? And yes, I am aware that Bottoms came out in 2023 and it featured lesbian love story type themes. In my opinion, Bottoms is more of a teen sex comedy like American Pie and Superbad rather than a rom-com or a romance movie, as they all have the same goal of doing X, Y, and Z in order to get laid. And 2024's Love Lies Bleeding was more popular in independent spaces rather than mainstream ones. However, we will be getting Hayley Kiyoko's Girls Like Girls later this year. What I will say is we have gotten a lot of LGBTQ plus love stories on the small screen in recent years, from Heated Rivalry to Uncoupled to Fellow Travelers to Looking and The L Word. And I think that's because the TV industry can take more risks than the film industry can, especially as television has more time to build out these characters and find their audience. And I think that's also why we get a large wave of romantic films hitting streaming services as well. Films are more risk adverse because they have to bring in quick and massive financial returns. And the financial incentive for romance and comedy films are much lower. And there's so much evidence for that in recent years. Last year's Eternity, for example. It concluded its domestic run having earned roughly $16.2 million at the box office, with a worldwide total of $35.8 million. And even though it made back its reported budget, which is listed at $12 million, its overall earnings still sounds really low, especially when you compare it to heavy hitters like Zootopia 2 and Lilo and Stitch from last year, both of which are existing IP and raked over $1 billion at the global box office. And even though the drama just came out in theaters and it already made back its $28 million budget in its opening weekend, the A-list led romantic dramedy's opening weekend numbers still pale in comparison to what its competitors have done, including fellow new release, the Super Mario Galaxy movie, and Project Hail Mary, which is in its third week now, outpaced the drama too. Still, some love stories with massive budgets are given room to fail on the big screen. Take, for instance, last year's A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, starring Margot Robbie and Colin Farrell. Not only was this film a critical upset, but it was also a massive box office flop, making back $20.2 million of its reported $45 million budget. And the year before that, Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum's Fly Me to the Moon also generated mixed reviews, and it generated only $42 million worldwide against a reported $100 million budget. But just because these two films failed, it doesn't mean they're going to stop making rom-coms and romance movies centered around straight white couples. This year alone, we have Wuthering Heights, Verity, Solo Mio, One Night Only, Sense and Sensibility, Practical Magic 2, and The Bride, the last of which flopped massively at the box office, by the way.
You know, rom-com is a genre, but there's so much within the genre as well. So it's so unfair to say, like, okay, here's this one story in this one Black rom-com. If it does well, great. We'll, greenlight all these other ones. But if it doesn't, sorry, no one, like, that's so, like you said, they would never do that if it was a white, rom-com that would flop. Because so many flop. So many of, like, our favorite white or whatever rom-coms or just movies in general flop, but then we just love them when they got to like VHS or when they got to DVD,
Right.
or even with time we just love them. So it's so unfair to think like, oh, okay, we hope it's good so we can get more, but if it's not, this is it. Like that's
Yeah.
so unfair.
Or it's just we put it straight to streaming because, these movies
Yeah.
nowadays, the rom-com and just comedy in general, don't perform as well as these big blockbuster movies because they're trying to make the money back. And, even with Eternity, they had a great marketing push. It still made its budget back, but it's not doing the same numbers as like Avatar 3.
So if You, Me, and Tuscany underperforms at the box office, why does it have to impact whether we get more Black love stories on screen? And if it does fail, what does that mean for other diverse love stories?
What I've been seeing online is that, which makes me a little bit nervous, I feel like so many studios seem to be betting on this one movie to move forward with other
Yeah.
rom-coms and in general, I think it's not even just rom-coms that are Black lead, but once again, it's like dependent on this one film when I feel like there's never a lack of fandom for it. It's always studios just kind of not wanting to get behind the productions. Let me go back to like 2017, 2018, when we saw Crazy Rich Asians really come out and have this incredible success. I really thought that that was going to be a huge boom for rom-coms, and it has not been quite that, but we did see again in 2023, Anyone But You, which starred Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney, that did bonkers at the box office. And again, once again, proved there's really a fandom for rom-coms that never really went away. It's just a matter of like studios taking that seriously. What I see and what I hear is just a lot of writers not being given the opportunity. They have the material and they have interesting scripts, and it's like studios won't greenlight them.
There sadly isn't an immediate solution to this problem, other than everyone needs to roll in squad deep to the movie theaters to support You, Me, and Tuscany. And my hope that if it does actually perform, it sends a very loud message to studios that these stories are worth telling, and audiences are interested in seeing more stories just like this. And that's all I have to say about that.